And all of a sudden I'm assaulting people with megaphones instead of I'm defending myself with my free hand or the closest hand or whatever it is.
Right.
And I shouldn't have to defend myself in the first place. People are like, why did you bring your child to when you're doing this? It's like, what do you mean? You're putting the blame on me for having my child at my side instead of the
Yeah.
blame on the assaulter for seeing my child there, but still having the audacity to assault her mother in front of her.
It's a wonderful day in the homiehood, a wonderful day for a homie. Won't you be my homie to Taro? Good morning, Dina.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm even though I got little sleep, I'm refreshed right now. I'm good. I'm in a good mood.
Fantastic, fantastic. I'm sorry to hear you didn't get much sleep.
That was all me. I brought that on myself.
Okay, were you up late on Twitter?
I was Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, all of them. Yeah.
On the front lines, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, so well, before we get into it, maybe you could just introduce yourself for those who don't know.
So my name is Deana Sherif, and I don't know. I have a small property management company. I manage housing co-ops in Ottawa. I've been doing that for about 12 or 13 years in my own company, but I also worked for another company prior to that. And yeah, I've always been an activist. I've always been vocal about, you know, the environment, especially. I've won community service awards in elementary school. I was the Minister of Environment in my school parliament in grade 8. So it's just always been a thing. For me, is just sort of to help balance the power. And I always root for the underdogs. So that's just that's just a little wrap up of who I am.
Okay, amazing.
I have two
And
kids. Maybe you want to know about that, but I've got a son and a daughter. They're exactly 15 years apart. One's 23, one is 8. You guys know Camilla. I used to bring Isaac, my son, to protests as well when he was younger. Protests have completely changed compared to what it was. I mean, there's always that element of protest that we're seeing with the convoy sort of stuff and white supremacist sort of idea, but back when I was going to protest with my son, it didn't look like this.
okay, sure. And so you're a mother, and maybe just for the younger generation, what are your pronouns?
She, her.
Okay, awesome. And so you're a mother, and so what can you maybe tell us about how these protests have changed over the years? Like, yeah, 15 years, your children are 15 years apart, and
Yeah.
you've been bringing them along. So obviously, they might not have always, as you said, have this white supremacist tone. But what else has changed in your experience?
Well, I feel like the vitriol, but again, like, the things that we protest, my son and we went and did the protest for the Egyptian revolution. My background is Egyptian, second generation. My parents moved here in 1970. So when that whole Arab Spring was going on, we were, absolutely supporting the change in the regime. So we went out and protested. We would protest on behalf of Palestinian rights. So those protests are basically, you land at the Hill, speeches, chanting, all of those wonderful uniting things. Walk to the Human Rights Memorial at the courthouse for more speeches, flags, all those things. And it's an opportunity for people to learn more what's happening in that country at the moment or what you're protesting, right? That's another purpose for protests. It's not just about demanding a change or whatever. It's educating more people about what's happening and what the circumstances. And so I think with the protests that we see now, there's less about education, in my opinion, and more about just forcing your point on people and using tactics that I guess we're in modern times here in Canada. It's not something that we're accustomed to when it's things that Well, I guess with the convoys, I'll just be specific, like with the white supremacist and freedom movement. I mean, these things are just hypocritical to begin with. So it's hard for them to get that message to everybody. So they use a lot more, violent tactics, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
and I was gonna say there, like when I was part of the BLM protests that were happening locally after George Floyd passed, and it feels like we're gonna have another surge of those protests, for civil rights for Black
yeah,
folks. Like I felt like that very was still about education
correct.
and you know informing people and informing large groups of people. So yeah, there's definitely I feel like a difference, and I didn't really see any violence, especially not in Canada when it had the
Mhm.
when it was the BLM protests.
Right.
So
Agree.
in your opinion, like why are these convoy protests specifically? Why is it violent?
I think inherently these people are violent people. Like, I don't think they have a very individualistic view of things. Like we saw it during the pandemic. The people, they say that they want freedom, but that message itself is hypocritical. So um, they want to be able to be free to do whatever they want, but who are the people who suffer? It's all the vulnerable people who are suffering. So people with disability have to stay home because they're immunocompromised, or it's just um, it's uh, dangerous for them to come out. They want to be able to not be vaccinated and help in long-term care homes where we know those people felt the brunt of the virus, right? They just want
Right.
to be able to do what they want to do, and it doesn't matter on the other people. So to me, that sentiment in itself is violent. And I
Yeah.
know that people think that, and when we use the term violent, it's like a hyperbole, but it's not, because this leads to death and harm or sickness, right? So it is physical violence, in my opinion. So it's just they're angry. They're really angry people, and so it's easy for them to lash out. And there's a mob mentality to it as well, and it festers online, and it festers sort of in the public as well.
Yeah, and I mean that has definitely been something that's been part of my development as someone who got more and more involved with politics is realizing that there's all types of forms of political violence. And when we hear
Mhm.
violence, we think of something like a boxing match. But when people are dying on unnecessary deaths as a result of COVID and the lack of response and the anger against like vaccines or masks, those are all preventable deaths. Those are all political
Mhm.
deaths, right? So
100%.
yeah.
And it's interesting, you brought up Amira El-Rawabi. She's Egyptian as well. Her parents were really good friends with my parents, and we would get together as kids and go to the Egyptian community. They'd hold one once a month, so we would at least see each other once a month. And then when our parents would have their host their dinner parties till 2 or 3 in the morning, and the kids would be allowed to stay up, and we would all play. And as you were talking about her, you made me think, and it's funny because Amira has always been very, as even as a child, very composed, very thoughtful, um, and sort of, um, just mild mannered. And I was always very rambunctious and, loud and opinionated and whatever. And so now we grow into it,
Mhm.
and we are both, fighting for the same sort of causes in our own style. And it really doesn't matter to racists. They just don't want to be called racist. So she takes the academic approach. She backs up what her statements. She is uh, polite, even in her messaging. She does it all right. She packages it all right.
Yeah.
And then me, I'm front and center. I use humor, I use crass. I'm like the in your face. It doesn't matter how you package it. Racists just don't want to be called racists. And
Yeah.
that's all there is to it. They don't want to come to terms with the fact that um, their way of being and their way of thinking and perpetuating the cycle is actually causing harm on people and the country, in fact. So I stand with Amira. We're not close friends by any means right now, but I've bumped into her at City Hall when she was speaking on behalf of, anti-hate and Muslim women. And we've said a quick hi, but I totally respect her 100%, and I think she's doing a fantastic job. And yeah, we need to back her up 100%. We need to back
Yeah,
her, and I
totally.
think, yeah, like,
And yeah, what you're saying there is like it really reminds me of just like the different methods that we need to take on to combat uh racism or the rise of the alt right or the authoritarian measures that like Bill 21 in Quebec represent as well, right? Like you do need someone to be there on the inside and be polite and do all that. But you also need someone in the streets
mhm,
on the front lines who is
right.
standing up in the direct face of hate and racism. And that's what you were doing over the past weekend.
Yep.
Um as
That's
I'm
how I
sure
do.
that's how you
Yeah,
do it. That's how you do it, not
that's
just
how
this
I do
past
it.
weekend, but all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit about your experience being a counter protester at the Convoy 2.0 2023 rendition?
Yeah, of course. And I'll just start by saying that I was also a counter protester in January and February of 2022 when they were down by myself. I did not bring my daughter because it was too dangerous. She came the first day and it got too loud, and I caught on that it was too dangerous. We went home right away when we saw the tires squealing and trucks driving like ridiculous, insane.
Yeah.
So I took her home, and then and I stood in front in the middle of people in the middle of the square with my go home terrorist sign and some information to show them that, and I talked to people, talked to a lot of people. And then so with the 2.0, um, these are the remainder of the fringe, right? And these are the diehards. And so I have a previous relationship, quote unquote, with these people that were front and center in these assaults that I was part of, and so they were part of the Tupac Church. And you were asking in one of your episodes, what's Tupac? So
Yeah.
Tupac is the United People of Canada, and they were trying to buy a church in Ottawa. And Tamara Leach was behind that as well. Her friends were on the board. Okay. So there was like convoy, definitely convoy flavor to it. So the moment I found out about this through social media, I picked up my old sign from January, February 2022, go home terrorists. And I went right to that church and I stood in there, stood outside by myself with the sign, said nothing because I don't know these people.
Yeah.
And it started, and I went every single day since then. And then I started to meet some of the locals there, which are amazing people. And some of them are on your chat right now. I was able to, have conversations with those clowns, and I saw what their tactics were. And I tried to I call them clowns, but we did have good conversations. And a few of them there, I'll just tell you a really quick story. Um, when I needed help, one woman I needed to leave her apartment right across the street that night. I just see her throwing stuff out of her balcony, and I'm like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "I need to move today. I need to move today." She needed to, because of her, it was a slumlord. I took pictures of her entire apartment after.
Yeah.
I'm in housing, and it was a really bad situation, but she found another place, but she was worried her stuff was going to get locked in. She's a senior woman, and it started to rain, and I just have this SUV, and they all have trucks. So I just walked over and I said, "Hey, go get this person." I don't remember who I asked for. And one of the guys came over. He's like, "Hey, what do you need?" I said, "I need your trucks. I need you guys to help. We need to move this woman. Like, she needs to go." They all helped. Like the
Yeah.
next day they came, and it was great. We put aside our differences just so we can help this woman. Okay. But there are a few of them, like Ocean, who was just vitriol and anger and resentment. Her friend Christine tried to follow my daughter and me home one night from the church. We caught that on a live. I was like, I think somebody's following, and I turned on my phone. And so, and then Ocean has nonstop, sort of targeted me in my own Facebook feed, but also like to her friends. She plays big tough. She's gonna punch me in the face and stuff. So I made a TikTok about it, like when I first started on TikTok a few months ago.
Mm.
Anyway, so at the 2.0, I use my usual tactics. I have my megaphone. I go out, make jokes, I'm singing, whatever. And so at that moment, I was singing the national anthem and she saw me. So she came from the other side of the square just so she can come to me. And then you see the altercation. And as I said in my, the stream with Joe last night, okay, I hit her phone by accident with the megaphone. Like you see my body posture. I didn't lean towards her. I just pivoted my body and turned. And she was that close that my megaphone hit her.
Yeah.
So she smashed my phone out of my hand. And I went to hit her back and then I stopped myself. And in that moment, that should have been over, right? Because it was her reaction. Phone for phone, we're even. Now I'm gonna go get my phone. But it wasn't enough for her. She just pursued me and she started pushing me out of the way and elbowing me and hits me with her coffee mug and sprays coffee all over everybody else. And my back is to her. So I'm gonna, punch her out of the way. That's the defensive move. I took boxing when I was younger. I was in karate. Like I'm not, boosting or anything. It's just these are natural instincts for me now, right? And so, I whack her off of me and turn into position. And while I'm turning into position, that's where she smashes my ear with her metal thermos. My hat was on and whatever. So then I get up, I ended up blocking one of her hits. And then you have Chris Dacey, who has always, this is the reason why I would go out to Tupac or I would go out to these things, because they are massive propagandists, these people. They will record stuff like Viva Frey and those people, Pan from War Campaign, they'll record these things and then clip it and then be like, look how peaceful we are. All I saw was peace. And it's like, you're purposely leaving out the rest of the stuff and selling propaganda. And Chris Dacey did the same thing. He clipped the video to the point where all you see is my arm hitting her and then her hitting me back. And I mean, we have to be more intelligent and critical online. You've got to realize that when you're capturing mid-fight, there is definitely more to the story. But at the same time, all the people that are hating are the ones who want to hate. So I'm not looking to change their minds, right? They're the ones who are just, this is their nugget of gold that they can, hold against me, which they're not doing a very good job. That doesn't, haters can hate. It doesn't matter. My message doesn't change. My tactics aren't going to change. I'm going out there. I'm going to be in their face and that sort of thing. So as far as I'm concerned, the assault really started. I mean, when she slapped my phone, that could be considered, but the assault really started when the fight was over, my back was turned to her and she pursued. So I filed a police statement yesterday, and I'm just waiting to hear from the detective. I have to send clips of the video so that they can have the video evidence. They have my doctor's record, and yeah, it's too bad. She is troubled. She has PTSD, according to her. She has BPD, like a borderline personality disorder, she has said. And I don't know if she's saying that tongue in cheek, the BPD, or not, but I feel like she was harmed as a young child through the process of I think she was removed from her home at somewhere around 3 years old. I don't know the full story. And so she's in this cycle, this like self-loathing cycle. She's like 40 years old, has 3 kids that, she doesn't have custody of. And she acts like a really young, stunted sort of person. She's, she acts like she's still 18 years old, like there's just, there's definitely some mental health issues there that I have compassion for. I don't excuse any of her tactics. I don't excuse her violence, and I don't excuse her vitriol.
Yeah.
But I at least come from a place of understanding anyway.
For sure. And it's
So,
important to just like keep a intersectional lens on stuff
yeah.
like this. And mental health can always play an issue. So it's great that you, even though you are in quite literally direct conflict with Ocean, and like you still have empathy for her as well. Is that what I'm picking up on?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have
Yeah.
empathy for the convoyers in like on a one-on-one basis. Like I tried to I've always tried to talk to them, even if my initial message is in your face and they hate it. I
Yeah.
don't care because I believe what I'm saying, but I'll always speak with them and I'll always try to, I mean, always speak with them. Some of them are just plain ass trolls
Of
who,
course.
or they're so far down the rabbit hole that I simply don't have time for that. But
Yeah.
oftentimes we have a very similar agreement on what the issues are in Canada: homelessness, mental health, uh, uh, drug addiction, inflation, all of these things. It's
Yeah.
just that some of us care enough to understand the roots of these problems and actually do the work to correct it. And some of us are just too comfortable blaming, Trudeau, or blaming uh, immigrants, or just finding a boogeyman as
Right.
the issue instead of looking at the systemic problems that brought us to where we are, right? And
For
so
sure.
that's kind of a waste of time to me.
If it was that easy, we might all be out there with them.
Yeah,
Right?
100%.
So,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. And
yeah,
I mean, wishing you luck. I'm so sorry that you have to go through all that with like the police and I think the big thing that stands out for me is and that I don't think any of the video that I saw was you saying now that she saw you and came and walked over towards you with an
yeah.
intent to kind of like instigate. If someone is in your
Which is,
personal space, also to the point where when you naturally just like turn your body, that you are
mhm,
somehow, I don't think turning your body without the intent to injure or hit someone is, I don't think that's considered assault. I
it
mean,
is not.
I don't know
Yeah.
the law. I'm not a lawyer. Even though some people who are lawyers have weighed in on their opinion about what is and is not on these
Yeah.
videos, but I genuinely think you're in the right here, and I hope that whatever legal proceedings you have to undergo,
I
see it
didn't
that
want
way
like
as well.
I didn't want to involve the police. If you guys look back at my lives where there have been assaults or whatever, I am never the one that goes to the police. Never.
Yeah, yeah,
And people are like, I hope you file charges and whatever. And, you know, don't like, I won't go to the police. We all know what can happen if you go to the police, to the other
yeah.
person. And I feel like I have resolved that issue, or I've dealt with that issue there. And so there were two assaults, right? There were two things that happened. I'm
Right.
purposely not going to go to the police for that second incident that happened, because that was just a stupid kid being stupid, right?
Mm-hmm.
I call him a kid. I know he's an adult. I can't help it. He acted like a kid,
Yeah.
like very, very high school, stupid kid that needs some, guidance or whatever. It's easy. Some guy he just met says, go do this. And he goes and does it with no
Right.
regard for the fact that my daughter is here and my back is turned to him. It was just a completely callous,
Yeah.
stupid thing for him to do. But
And I guess anyone
yeah,
who's watching this interview for the first time, all of these
yeah,
videos, like they exist
or,
on Joe Morin 73's YouTube channel if you want to just see
right,
like I think the biggest perspective on what exactly went
right.
down
There's
in
no
these
clipping.
incidents. So yeah,
It's not
there's
edited.
right. Yeah. So and yeah, that is something that is also so concerning is I think it's called clip chimping,
Yeah,
when you're just editing a video so that it represents your narrative. And that's something that even as a live streamer, if I was a bigger live streamer, for example, people could clip what I say out of perspective,
out
post
of
it
context.
online
Yeah.
on Twitter with their opinion, and suddenly you get all this like vitriol, because I don't know why, but we haven't learned in 2023 that hey, people have intentions, and those intentions can
Right.
be very easily changed just by editing a 30-minute video or a 30-second video into a 15-second video,
Yeah, yeah, just
you
take the
know?
piece you want. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
all of a sudden I'm assaulting people with megaphones instead of I'm defending myself with the, my free hand or the closest hand or whatever it is.
right.
And I shouldn't have to defend myself in the first place. People are like, why did you bring your child to when you're doing this? It's like, what do you mean? You're putting the blame on me for having my child at my side instead of the
Yeah.
blame on the assaulter for seeing my child there, but still having the audacity to assault her mother in front of her. Like, it,
Right.
are
Yeah,
we,
make it make
the
sense.
hypocrisy is just absolutely unreal. Um, the Rebel News woman asked me that right then and there. Oops. The Rebel News woman asks me that right after the incident. I'm like, I didn't know she was from Rebel News and I should have caught on because it was the most ridiculous question. And I was like, no, I don't feel bad for bringing my daughter here. This was supposed to be a family friendly event. Number
Yeah.
one, I was singing the national anthem. So if you think that that is antagonistic, you have some serious problems, Snowflake. Like, I'm standing there singing the national anthem in a megaphone, and that was enough to trigger the rest of you to decide that it was okay for me to be pursued,
Yeah.
have a phone to that stuff didn't bother. I didn't even know where she was at that point.
Yeah.
I don't care if the phone's right in my face. I'm not trying to hide my identity. And actually, on that point, when you have somebody like Karima or her stands who are trying to equate me putting my phone to the guy who stole Freedom Baby off my back
Yes.
to like his comfort to protecting the identity of a vulnerable community, people who are there to defend children, parents, performers, be united as a community to defend each other. And her goal is to get in their faces. And you want to compare that to me just having been, uh, violated
Yeah.
and wanting to show who violated me.
Oh my
There's
goodness.
a big difference.
Can you imagine what would have happened if they had done that to Karima? What they did to
Oh,
you?
Lord.
It would have
Oh,
been
Lord.
an absolute social media frenzy. Everyone would have been worked up, and Karima would have been very clearly the victim because I
Ridiculous.
mean, in
Yep.
your case, you are the victim, right?
Yeah.
And she would have blown the shit out of it if that had
Oh,
happened to her.
done.
You know,
Done.
so to see the actual kind of hypocrisy, once again, we've dedicated a little too much energy maybe to Karima, but like it's
Yeah, I
just
don't
like
talk about her much, and I don't say her name much on social media anymore because,
yeah,
like, I'll just say her. But this to me was important to bring up. Don't you dare compare the
yeah,
comfort of fascists, racists, anti-science, whatever it is. And even if that kid is none of those things, he's a
hmm,
violator at the very least, because he
yeah.
came to me when my back was turned to him and did something that he had no right to do.
Yeah. Sorry, what did he
But
do? Like your mic cut out there for a second. He
oh, sorry, he violated me essentially. Like he
yeah.
came, my back was turned. I'm talking to another guy who's trying to pick a fight with me. You'll hear me say before that other guy steals Freedom Baby, are
Yeah.
you trying to pick a fight with me? And the other guy's like, yeah. And he's got his 3 young kids with him. Okay. He's got his 3 young kids. So my daughter's standing there beside me and I'm like, yeah, okay. Then buddy behind me rips off Freedom Baby.
Hmm. Which
Right?
so just for someone listening, Freedom Baby
Oh
is
yeah.
a backpack with a baby face on it
No, no.
or what is it?
It's Freedom Baby is a foam baby face from the dollar store, a big foam baby face that was
Okay.
sold at Halloween. And I happened to see it and I'm like, this is Convoy. So I grabbed it. And the way Freedom Baby started is when I was protesting the organizers at the commission, the POEC, I had a utility wagon and I turned that into a truck. And then I put I stuffed the shirt that you saw Freedom Baby wear and it says honk, and I turned it
Mhm, yeah.
into an actual like whatever. And he stood outside of the POEC staring right at the front door beside me. And I named him Freedom Baby. And now that's sort of he's a legacy.
Right. Your third child, maybe.
My, my third child,
Yeah,
born
so
January 28th. No.
right. That's right. And like one thing again, so obvious with that video is like you and you can see them being like, "Hey," pointing towards that lady, and
Yeah.
they're so obviously like
And
approaching
he
you
pulls
with
up
the
his
intent.
mask.
He pulls up
Yeah.
his mask thinking, "Oh, I'm going to be sneaky about this," which he very obviously wasn't. And not only that, but you can see him walking up to his name is Daisy, and or
Oh, no, that guy was
sorry,
Carl. That's
Carl,
Carl Dance.
Carl.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, right. He walks up to Carl and is like, "Hey, you're the guy on TikTok."
You're the
So he
TikToker, yeah.
obviously like idolized Carl and wanted to like impress him, which again, you comparing to him as a teenager or a kid, this is very teenager behavior. To like, oh, I'm gonna impress this guy I know on TikTok by
Yeah.
harassing this woman with who has their back turned. And
With her child to her side.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so to me, the fact that, some people have like taken the clip of that video and are trying to say that you are aggressive in some way or the violent one is like really, really sad and pathetic. And we should know better as people who all use the internet.
Well, you're missing a big point. When I
Hmm.
turned and looked at him with the phone, he ripped the phone out of my hand, and you don't fully see that on the global news clip.
Right.
People think he just pushed my hand out of the way. He had full possession of my phone at that point. So when you
Yes.
look at the Joe's video, like that, I wouldn't have hit him because he took Freedom Baby. He threw Freedom Baby away as soon as there's a convoy man who told him right away,
Right.
that's not okay. Get, whatever. So he just
Yeah.
threw it like a kid that he is. Instead of handing it to me, he's like, oh, I'm gonna let this thing go and like throws it. And then so I tried to video him and he just rips the phone out of my hand,
Yeah.
and so it's like my phone is smashed already because of what Ocean did. Like
Right.
it's, I don't know if you guys are going to see this, but it's like, no, you
Oh
can't see it.
dear. Oh dear.
It's smashed to pieces, not to pieces, but like I'm missing pieces of it. It's going to pooch soon if I don't get it fixed. Right.
Right.
So um, now I've got this within what, 20 minutes of being assaulted up on the hill. I have another guy who's like ripped my stuff off my back and then rips my phone. He just finished throwing Freedom Baby on the ground. What is he going to do with my phone? Right. So it's
Yeah.
like, take my phone. Done.
Yeah.
Like it's a walk away.
It seems like a very obvious reaction,
Right.
like especially when like you're a woman defending yourself against not only one person but potentially two or more people. Like,
Oh, Danny, the
um,
misogyny online is unreal. Like
yeah,
it just really brings out sort of the what is really going on in this in societal minds, right? Like it's really ridiculous.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry that you're going through that.
That's the easy part. I mean, for me, I don't like I again, I've said it last night. I don't hold convoy people's opinions. There's no weight to it. Like
Yeah,
that none of that touches me. It really doesn't. I think the thing that bothered me the most was that there was a frenemy relationship with another personality, and the thought was that we were going to sort of bridge, like forget about the fringe people. That's difficult to bring together. The other people
yeah,
can work on that, but the other people where we can sort of come together and actually have these discussions and stuff. But then it turned out that this person maybe is growing really fast, or maybe I just didn't really know them because it's only been a couple of months and I gave them way too much cred. Is just basically like any other propagandist. And, um, you know, I would never do that, even to people who I really seriously dislike.
yeah,
I want people to judge a circumstance by the truth of the circumstance. Like you can't fix shit by lying about it. You can't
Right.
start off a conversation or healing or any of that stuff by being part of the lie. And
Yeah.
if these convoy people were actually hurt and actually want healing, then these aren't the tactics that you would use to do that. So I don't believe them anymore that they want to heal. I never did really. Like this is the whole root of the problem of what Justin Trudeau said, and now they're using that against him, where he's, basically calling it out. This isn't about what you guys are saying it's about. I
Yeah.
do believe people have been harmed through the pandemic, 100%. I think mental health should have been highlighted before the pandemic, and taking care of our hospital systems. All of these things we knew were broken and they were breaking them further. Then the
Yeah.
pandemic just really exposed all that stuff. Um, but at the same time, the way to a path to healing is not to lie and twist stuff so that you can whip up angry people even more. None of that is helpful.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we're always, it's not like we don't care or aren't angry about some of the same things that convoy people are angry about, right? And
We
we're
were there too.
constantly trying to find real solutions and
Right.
looking for what the actual solutions are. And you're totally right. Like, you need to acknowledge the reality of the situation. And the reality of the situation is, hey, Doug Ford had these lockdown measures. If you want to direct your anger somewhere, direct it there. But you're
Yeah.
angry at Trudeau because the media that you consume has whipped you up into a frenzy. Just to give one example. Um
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So
I'm
where
pissed off at Doug Ford too with his lockdown measures. They were
yeah,
so stupid and they
me
weren't even
too.
thought out properly. They were ridiculous and people
Totally.
got hurt because of it. So, we're on the
Yeah.
same page. It's not to say we shouldn't have had lockdowns. That's not the answer.
Yeah.
But and I don't even like the term lockdown because we
Oh, well,
weren't
I mean,
locked
yeah,
down.
we didn't even really lock down by like the
No, we weren't
standards of
Australia, we
other.
weren't China, we weren't
Yeah,
like army wasn't walking through the streets. I mean, the
I
worst
know.
of it was in Quebec where they had curfews.
Right.
Um, but yeah,
I know. It's mind-blowing. And of course, we've all been critical of the response to COVID. It could have been better. It could have been more focused in areas that are more effective. And the problem was really too because they didn't focus on actual solutions and they did silly things like
yeah,
you
political shit.
yeah, and it created a lot of distrust, not only for
Yeah,
people who are part of the convoy movement or the far right, but even for everyday folks, like people on the left as well. There's legitimate criticisms, but since we're
yes,
not the loudest person in the room, we those criticisms don't get heard, and they get brushed aside by the people in power. So
yeah,
it's really unfortunate. Anyways, we you are there on the front lines, and
yeah,
part of it is fighting fascism or the rise of fascism. But like,
yes.
is there anything that you want to say about what we are building, separate of that, or where we need to like focus our attention?
Oh, absolutely. So, one of the best things that is coming out of this is, well, I think more people are starting to come out. And you know what to me is really sparking people's activism and coming out is the movement against the anti-trans and anti-drag sentiment. And
Hmm.
I think the 2S LGBTQ community really really does know how to bring people together and really knows how to organize. I'm not an organizer. I'm a lone soldier, and if something's going on, I'm going to go out to those
Hey, hey, wait,
things.
wait! Shout out to Joe for a moment. Not a lone
Oh,
soldier, are you?
no, 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 no. I'm talking about prior to Joe. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
and even Joe, like I'm still going out. Like I stood on the Parliament Hill by myself
yeah,
uh, for veterans' rights when I found out that some crazy lady is telling veterans who just want to have access to the health care that they are entitled to
yeah.
look at MAID, which is not what that's designed for. And it like MAID is a very important thing, but like it's access to humane death.
Yeah.
but it's not there to get somebody who is pestering you, as you see it, as an annoyance to just end their lives. And so that
Yeah.
was disgusting. And I stood by, I sent it out on Facebook that I was going. I mean, it was last minute. I still
Yeah.
stood out there for 3 hours by myself with my sign, and did that. So
Good for you.
I guess my point, and Joe, yes, and thank God for Joe,
Mhm.
because he has basically been able to correct the narrative when it comes to me many, many times,
Yeah.
because he's right there capturing it. And same with Gigi and whatever. So, like, his work is super important. So yes, shout out to Joe 100%. Um, uh, but in terms of like where we should go with this, I think whatever people can bring to the table, like I said, there are people who can be academic and thoughtful. There are a lot of people that you don't see behind the scenes that I had no idea was happening, and it like I don't know how to what words to use, other than like, it gave me great comfort to see there are a lot of people who are so good at researching and care so much about this, um, sort of like hatred, the underbelly, and they're getting all this information about all of these people and gathering it and essentially doing intelligence work. And
Yeah.
and all the material that I have when I'm out protesting is fed to me. I don't have time to research people. They're sending me this information, but that, anytime I've had a question about something, I can go and turn to that forum and say, anybody know this? And then within seconds, like, there's already a
Right.
dossier on it or something. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing, because this is how we deal with these people. We have to know who they are, know who your enemy is, right?
Mm.
So that is something that they do either behind the scenes or open. I mean, you have people like Resistance Cats, who's totally tracking their court appearances, and what's coming out of it. And then the rest of the cats involved in there who are also listening in on these court sessions, and reporting back on it. Like, these people are amazing, fantastic. Then you have people who actually come out as well, like Colin. You had him on your show a few days ago.
Right.
He organize, and he's like super brilliant. You have this whole network of people everywhere that you can rely on. We
Yeah.
all rely on, Canada relies on, to come out. And we're seeing a rise in anti-fascism, right? Like, and we're starting to drown them out, and we need to keep doing that. I think everybody needs to come out, if they can. And it doesn't it keeping it light and fun, I think, is the answer.
Mhm.
And um yeah, I just think we need to keep doing this. We need to hold government accountable. This is something both sides agree on.
Yeah.
I can't wait for a moment where we get fired up enough to get off of our butts and out on the street. What we see in France, going on in France right now, the labor movement and them protecting their rights. Like, the French people have always been known. I don't know if you heard, but the energy the energy companies gave away free energy to schools. And yeah, Al Jazeera just put out a thing. I'm going to post it.
Okay.
Like, the entire country is fighting back against Macron and his government, because of all this inflation and stuff. So they ended up
Right.
giving free power to schools and hospitals and whatever. All the unions have come together. There's over 1 million people protesting what's going on there.
Yeah.
That's the fire we need all over the world,
Yeah.
because our governments aren't doing the job for us, right? And like, this whole inflation thing, that, to me, that can be resolved. They're allowing corporate greed to carry this out. The whole green belt sale.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna, like you said, I'm gonna build a hospital. For who? Is it an animal hospital? Like, is this a wildlife hospital? Like, is this a tree hospital? Is this a swamp hospital? Like,
Yeah.
this is our, uh, you know, it's insane that they're able to say these things and nobody is getting, I mean, some of us are, but we're not fired up enough to
I
just
agree.
mobilize and let's get out there and be like, we don't need the fuck Trudeau signs. We don't need the fuck Doug Ford sign. That's not the message. What
Mhm.
we need to say is, um, we are in charge here. We are the people, and we need access to healthcare. We need access to um, housing. We need affordable groceries instead of, you know, like I don't care if their profits are based on a percentage. There comes a point where, you know, they're hoarding the wealth. It doesn't matter. Then
Yeah.
bring your profit margin down. Nobody needs to lie. Like it's just it boggles my mind. It's insane.
Right.
Our money is in their pockets and we're barely, you know, and then they want to privatize healthcare so that
Yeah.
we can't even afford groceries. I mean, I'm being a little, people can afford groceries, but barely. Like we're
Yeah.
changing everything. Why are we making all of these concessions as
Right.
human beings in our own cities, provinces, and countries? And those people are profiting off of our concessions. It's we have
Yeah.
to work more, we have to eat less, we have to eat less healthy. Uh, you know, we have to um, have less quality of healthcare.
Yeah.
We can't have the medicine that we need. We have to watch people die, and they're taking more money than anybody ever needs in a lifetime. It
Yeah.
makes zero sense.
And I mean, really, we don't have to, but we are watching it happen. And we could do what they're doing in
Right.
France or in Britain and hitting the
Yeah.
streets and getting as angry as we should be. I don't know. There's something about Canadian culture where we're a bit more timid and complacent and willing to accept maybe things that we shouldn't be
We
accepting.
shouldn't.
Um, and if it's true, if these are systemic problems that grocery stores are facing, then how come there are not systemic solutions to these
Right.
problems, right? But we know, there's some funny business going on there, quite literally. So
Right.
yeah, Dina, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
It's
It was
really great,
awesome.
that you were able, I hopefully to like set the record straight for yourself. Not that the people watching this necessarily need it set straight, but I think it's great to hopefully support each other, and we definitely support
Yeah.
you here.
Thanks for everybody's support too. Like I'm grateful for it. And you know, people will make up their minds. The truth is out there, so either people see it or they don't, and
Yeah.
you know, so be it.
All right. Well, keep
Okay.
speaking your truth, and
Thanks. You
we'll be
too.
we'll be
You're awesome.
listening.